Cool. We are live. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Tobin. How are you today?
Good. So for folks that will be picking up people, I see we've already grabbed some likes and hearts and people who saw the preview announcement that this was coming out. But this is something new that we're doing today. It's Monday, and I thought we would test a new format, which is the Monday Masterclass Conversation. And this is a little bit different. I say it's different because we've been doing panel discussions in the ERN group, the Experts Referral Network. So about every week or so, we've been doing a panel. We've done several so far. We get 3 experts together and we all talk about one topic, but I try to create a mix of folks who have very different perspectives on it. And so they're often quite interesting roundtable discussions. But today, Chris, it's just you and I.
I think that sounds fun.
Yeah, we're going to do it. And one of the reasons I thought you'd be the perfect first guest for this Masterclass Conversation format because I've been listening to your audiobook. And I know I'm going to ask you in a moment to tell a story that you shared in the book that made a big impression on me. And I think it will be very relevant to folks out there and sort of the world that we're living in today. But before we get there, let's share a little bit of background about you, because there may be some folks out there who have not heard of Chris Westphall yet, but they should. So Chris is joining us from Houston. That's right. Let's see, business coach, consultant, national champion pitch. What was it? The national champion, the pitch champion. That's what it was. Has worked with folks like Texas A&M University, coached clients on Shark Tank and Dragon's Den. I mean, you've been all over the place. And an author, keynote speaker, author of multiple books. What did I miss? There's quite a bit on that list.
I think you hit all the highlights. I think so. Yeah, I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, of course, because of the pitch coaching work. Obviously, if people want to help, if they want help bringing a business idea to life and going out for investment, for capital, I've helped a lot of entrepreneurs there. But I also, Fortune 1000 companies, small businesses. It's been a very interesting ride in the coaching business and also as a speaker. Because I don't really have a niche, Tobin. I really don't. I work with folks across everything from real estate to veterinary medicine to everything that you can think of in between. But always focusing on helping people to communicate more effectively. That's really where I feel like I give the most value.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to share with folks out there a personal experience that I had working with Chris recently. So I knew about his background as a U.S. national pitch champion and coaching folks that have been in these big business plan competitions, Shark Tank, all that stuff. I knew about that background, but I hadn't really seen him work his magic until about a week or so ago when we were in a group setting. And we were talking about the elevator pitch, that opportunity when, you have just a few seconds to make an impression on someone. And I'll be honest with you, Chris, like I'm probably about a dozen years, maybe even 20 years into this entrepreneurial thing. I've done accelerators. I've done a startup in the past, worked with organizations. I actually thought I had seen most of the coaching out there on sort of elevator pitch formats, but it was your process was a real wake-up call. You took a different tack than I was expecting. It made a big impression on me. I actually asked you, so which book should I buy to dig deeper into this? Because I know one of your books is actually about making the pitch, right? Yeah. I don't remember the exact title, but you pointed me to your most recent book and said, this is the one you should read. And I said, are you sure? Because the title, the title threw me. The title sounds different, but now that I'm in the book, I 100% see why you directed me there.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, the book, the one that you're talking about, it's Leadership Language. And this is the latest one. And the first book is called The New Elevator Pitch. And that's a book that's helped a lot of people. It's been an international bestseller. And I'm very proud of how that book has done. However, I think that this really is the book that kind of brings it all together and even makes it more modern. And in terms of its approach. It's fresher. It focuses on the power of the conversation, which, as you and I have talked about, I mean, that's really where the power is in the dialogue, whether you're having it online like this or in person, whenever we're able to do that. But that conversational power is really what's on offer in leadership language. Because if you think about it, the best presentation, the best pitch, it's really a conversation. And
music to my ears. You guys, that the conversation element is where I come. That's the lens through which I see the work that I do. And one of the other participants in the session that we did with you last week said, and I thought this was the takeaway of the night for me, is that when we think about elevator pitches or just that moment when someone says, so what do you do? And you've got to be succinct and be relevant and impactful. Most of us take the angle of thinking about the business, the work that we do, and what is the impact of that. And this other person said, people carry away how you make them feel. And that, I think, was the difference maker of what you shared with us. Again, we're not going to be able to do all that, just to be upfront with folks. We're not going to try to recreate that experience that I had. But what I would ask, because I think this is very relevant to what's going on today, Chris, would you tell us the story of Dodge and the Mann Gulch story and how it pertains to leadership in the face of crisis? Because I think that is a story that people will want to hear, and they'll want to hear, your takeaways from that story.
Okay. Well, let me just dive into it. Picture this: a hot summer day, and in fact, this summer day is so hot that the temperature is over 95 degrees in a state that touches Canada. It was 97 degrees, the hottest day of the year, in the Helena National Forest. And it had been a long, hot, dry summer, that summer in Montana. And the conditions were just right for a forest fire. And that's exactly what broke out. And 14 brave men were called in to put out what they believed to be a 10 a.m. fire. Now, a 10 a.m. fire in the parlance of firefighters is a fire that will burn itself out by 10 a.m. the next morning. The men were led by Wagner Dodge. Wagner Dodge was the oldest and most experienced of the firefighters, so naturally he was in charge. The men jumped on a C-47 transport plane, and they flew about 100 miles into an area of the world known as Mann Gulch, M-A-N-N, Mann Gulch. And because of the higher temperatures, the plane had to climb to a higher altitude. Instead of at 1,800 feet, the plane climbed to 2,000 feet. And from this higher altitude, the men parachuted into Mann Gulch. But as a result of the temperature, the higher altitude, or who knows what exactly, the parachute on their communications equipment, it didn't open. So the communications equipment was crushed the minute that it hit the ground. But the men weren't worried. They weren't worried because they were facing a 10 a.m. fire. So Wagner Dodge, when he arrived in Mann Gulch, his first call of duty was to meet up with his second in command, someone from the Forestry Service who was already in the area, who had actually spotted the fire. His name was Harrison. And so Dodge and Harrison, their first act of leadership, their first leadership decision was to go off and have a little bit of dinner. The men had arrived in Mann Gulch at 4:10 p.m. And in a departure from military tradition, the leaders ate first. When they came back to the group of men, who, by the way, were between the ages of 18 and 28 years old, most of them had seen active military service duty, they went into Mann Gulch at 5:40 p.m. And at 5:40 p.m., that was when Wagner Dodge saw it. He saw the flames, not 6 feet high, not 16 feet high, but 60 feet high, coming at the men on three sides at a rate of 200 feet per minute. The men looked down and saw that they were standing in 2.5 foot tall grass on a steep ridge. They were trapped. The wind had shifted. The flames were coming towards them. Can you imagine the panic, the fear, the sound of the trees being crushed by the flames as the wind shifted? The firefighters panicked. They didn't know what to do. Two men, they dropped to their knees. They shimmied through a crevasse and found their way to safety. But for the men who remained on that ridge, Wagner Dodge, their leader, he knew that he had to do something. And so he cried out. He cried out to his men in the middle of this blaze. He said, men, drop your tools. The men looked at him as if he'd lost his mind, because you see, for firefighters, all they have to fight the fire is their tools. So what their leader was saying wasn't counterintuitive. It wasn't innovative. It was insane. And the men, their panic rose. It became even greater, and pandemonium ruled the side of that gulch. And Wagner Dodge continued to cry out because he knew something that the men did not. He reached into his pocket as he cried out, men, drop your tools. He reached into his pocket and he pulled out a pack of matches in the middle of a forest fire. And he struck a match and he began lighting fire to the grass all around him in a circle. And he burned the grass all around him as he begged his men to come and join him in the circle of ash and burnt grass. But none of them did. None of them did. Wagner Dodge laid down in the middle of the burnt grass. And as the flames got closer and closer, there was nothing left to burn. As a result, Wagner Dodge was the sole survivor of the men who remained on that ridge during the Mann Gulch fire. And we know from the hour and minute hand on Harrison's watch what time the men expired. 5:56 p.m. They arrived in Mann Gulch at 5:40. 16 minutes. 16 minutes of panic, 16 minutes of fear, 16 minutes when the wind shifted and the unexpected showed up with tragic consequences. The story of the Mann Gulch fire is, in my mind, the quintessential story of leadership gone wrong, of a leader who had the right idea at the right time, but couldn't communicate, couldn't connect, couldn't lead by example to save the men on that ridge. And this 10 a.m. fire, the preconception of a 10 a.m. fire, let me tell you what really happened. It took 400 firefighters 5 days to put out the fire at Mann Gulch. And reflecting on this story, and as you hear this story, I wonder, and for the folks watching us, what stands out for you? Because it's a story when preconceptions, past tools didn't work. And when everything shifts, how can we communicate? How can we connect? How can we innovate? And how can we see that innovation not as something that is insane, but as the only way forward? Because when new ideas look like risk, maybe it's time to look again. I don't know. I'd be curious to know what shows up for the folks who are watching us today as they hear that story, because until when we were talking about this before we came on the call, I mean, the wind has definitely shifted.
Yeah. That was my takeaway when I heard you tell this. So first of all, my first takeaway is you're a master storyteller, and I bet this is not the first time you've shared that story. You definitely have it down. And it's a powerful story. I think it's, for me, toothpaste out of the tube. Once I heard that story, my impression was I will never not think about this story. And I think that the current environment, business environment that we, even just living environment that we're in today with the global pandemic, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, digging into that. There are enough folks that know a lot more about it than I do, that are covering that. But I think the environment that we're living in, there are some similarities, right? There's some some lessons to be learned from what happened in Mann Gulch that probably apply to because that was 50, 60 years ago. It was a while ago, right? That
it happened. And actually, 1949 actually was when it happened. But, sorry.
So right after the World War, but it's very relevant today because folks could stay on a simple level, poor leadership, right? From the eating first and sort of not taking it seriously. There's an element there, but that's not the full story. There was more going on with Wagner Dodge. There were good decisions, but at the wrong time, as you mentioned. What do you, in the work that you do, how do you use this story to pry open this conversation around leadership and innovation and being a change agent when the answers aren't always cookie cutter clear?
A lot of folks think that leadership is about a title or a role or a level of responsibility. And for me, it looks different. And I talk about this in the book, and I talk about it when I happen to be on stage or be able to share these ideas with folks like we are now. Leadership to me is about connection. And it's about connecting with the people that can help you and that you can help, that you can serve. So when leaders look in the direction of service and connection, I think that's where we find greater results. And I think that in this time of isolation, it seems that connection is harder to find, but actually it's all around us because we are all in the same boat. Wherever we are, wherever you're watching this, we're watching this from home. We are all in the same boat. And when we look in that direction of connection, when we look in the direction of service, and we share innovation that goes beyond preconceptions, and that's Mutual Admiration Society, right, Tobin? But that's what I like about your work is it's about shattering preconceptions. It's about looking at things in a new way. And the current environment calls on all of us to look at things in a new way, to look in the direction of innovation, not with fear, not with panic, but with a clear head that allows us to see new options. Because I believe, and this is the way the world looks to me, that there are always options. Options are all around us. Opportunities are all around us. And leaders, the true leaders, are the ones who calmly and clearly step forward and make sure that they bring the people with them that are interested in creating those new results as well. And that's why I'm so grateful that you and I are able to work together and be a part of this network, as well as the Sales Map team. I mean, that program has made a real difference for me. And the key to finding the value in it was stepping towards it and saying, I want to connect and I want to innovate. And that's really the question for everybody, I think, that's watching us today is, what are the connections that are going to make a difference for you? What's the service that you can provide? And what are the options that are out there that you're not seeing? Because that could be not just a path to safety, but to prosperity.
Yeah, absolutely. That there are new routes being sunk right now that are going to, well, sorry about that. I'm getting a call on another line and it.
Right there, Tobin, it's me.
No, I know, isn't it off? I haven't figured out how to turn it off on my computer because it's ringing there. So, wow, this is a new challenge that I haven't seen before.
It happens.
Oh, there we go. It's off now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So, going back to the Mann Gulch story, in thinking about sort of the phase that we're in. Did Wagner Dodge go off the rails early when he separated himself? He essentially broke the bonds of communication. He prevented some of these, the need for communication channels were severed early by that decision. Is that one of your takeaways? Correct.
The interpretation, well, the easiest way to look at it, Tobin, is if you don't walk the talk.
Yeah.
If your behavior is different than what the circumstances dictate, because everyone went into Mann Gulch, Wagner Dodge included, Harrison included, thinking 10 a.m. fire, thinking this is not serious. And it's not hard to draw a corollary to the way that we approach this virus, this pandemic. And nonetheless, here we are.
Yeah.
Right or wrong, timing. I mean, we could debate that for hours on end and never come to a conclusion. But what we can know is that here we are now. Here we are on the side of the mountain. And the decisions that we make going forward, regardless of what's gone on before, will create our future. It's easy to think, oh, the past determines the future. The past influences the future, perhaps, but it's the present. It's what we do right now that allows us to create whatever it is that we are going to create. And we are going to create a lot. I mean, when the tide turns, and it will, and I don't know when that time is, none of us do. But the thing is that we need to be prepared. We need to be connected. We need to be able to see the seriousness of the situation, but not in a way that causes panic, in a way that causes us to reflect and to serve in a new way. And that was what I think Wagner Dodge was trying to do. He wanted those men to live. He didn't want the outcome.
Right.
And I think that, just as our leaders and the folks who are making decisions, that they don't want anyone to die. And yet here we are. But the leadership message from the Mann Gulch story and from the world all around us is, how can we take the actions that are aligned with our circumstances, not out of alignment, because misalignment creates miscommunication, creates misunderstanding. And when you say, follow me, boys, nobody hears you.
Yeah. I want to shift the conversation into another area that's a real sweet spot for you, Chris, because you work with startups, folks, testing new innovative ideas. We talked about the pitch competitions that you've been part of and coached in the past. One of the things that we've been saying in Sales Map is we're all startups. We all got knocked back into startup mode. So I was working with a client a week or two ago, and they had diagrammed their process. You can imagine the flow chart with the boxes and the bubbles and all. And half of the map had been labeled proven. This step was proven. This step was proven. And then there were other areas that they were exploring and actively researching. And we had a conversation about that, because all those proven models that we've built and relied upon and honestly invested a lot to prove this process works for us, we're kind of all knocked back to square one in many ways, and we have to retest and reprove. I'm not saying that they're all throwaways, but sure, what we thought worked even 3 months ago that we could rely on when we started 2020 and we were building our plans for the year, and we said, we're going to do X, Y, Z and A, B, C as well, and we're going to build on this foundation. All those foundations have to be checked and stress checked, right? Stress tested.
Absolutely.
Again.
Absolutely. And it's about breaking free from preconceptions, not clinging to them. And if, what shows up for me, a couple of things that show up for me, if it looks like the premise is a given, it's time to go back and challenge the premise. And I think the future belongs to those who are ready to rewrite the premises or the givens. And to see things in a new way, because that's what innovation really is. Iteration is building on what's gone before and making it 1% better. Innovation is transformation. Innovation is something that has not gone on before. That's by definition, which means a couple of things. Innovation doesn't come from what you already know. Just saying, that's the definition of it. And so I think back to this quote from Mark Twain, and he said, "It ain't what you don't know that can hurt you. It's what you think you know that just ain't so." And this the current circumstances challenge every premise. And I tell you, for the folks who are watching us today, what premise would you like to challenge? Because I think they're all up for grabs. And I think that, let me give you this pen, and it's up to you to write your story and create the premise and the solution that you see. And if you do it in a powerful and compelling way, others will follow your ideas, invest in your ideas, and that's where results come from. That's just the way the world works. And if you're out there and people are sharing advice with you that says, well, this is the way that I did it, right? Do follow my steps and you'll get the same results. I just say, hold on a second, Gunga Din. Let's look at that.
Yeah,
because
that all has to be revisited. I don't think we could finish on a stronger metaphor, Chris. I love that angle of, here's the pen. What's the story that you're writing right now? And I've been thinking a lot about the cycles of learning that we're in. Like, how quickly can we turn that wheel, the cycle of learning, so that we're learning faster, we're accelerating it, because that is what is going to move us forward in this. Some people are hunkered in. Some people are, I'm going to wait this out and we're going to go back to normal and I'll pick up and go from there. And
don't wait. If that's you, if Tobin's talking about you, don't wait. Here, now I'm going to be Dr. Seuss. Don't wait, innovate. But because let me tell you something, people don't realize this. Innovation, it's never more than one thought away. And if you're so hunkered down that you're not open to exploring that, I say good luck. But every day I'm trying to look for, and I know you are too. And in fact, that's why we're working together, is to look at new ways to approach this new world, and to see the options, to see what's hidden behind the premises or the premise that we've been clinging to. These preconceptions that just don't work anymore. It's time to take a fresh look. There's never been a greater call for innovation, for leadership, self-leadership, to see things in a new way and make sure that you have the people around you that can help you to do that.
And I imagine with these innovative ideas or innovative ways of thinking, there are going to be some throwaway ideas in there too, right? We have to be willing to get our hands dirty and know that, these innovative leaps aren't perfection out of the gate. They're often muddy and messy and don't even look like a winner, at first. But if we can refine them, there's some potential there. We're looking for the potential ones that will stick.
That's right. That's right. And you got to give yourself room to explore, especially at times like these. And giving yourself that permission, that freedom, might be the most valuable gift you can give to yourself. At least that's the way it looks, the way that the world looks to me right now.
I think that's a really exciting environment, because what that looks like to me is conversations with folks, like yourself. I mentioned at the start, our expert referral network. That's really why we're doing this today. Right. Today's Masterclass Conversation is an extension of that group, but being able to talk with other folks, everyone's bringing a new and fresh perspective to the table, and exploring it through maybe some test, whatever it is in your space, campaigns. I work in the sales and marketing space, so we talk in terms of campaigns, but putting things out there to see how people respond, having conversations with folks and seeing what matters to them. How can you test the waters? Because if we're in this startup space, and that can be it can be fun because it is fresh and new. You get a license to go out and explore. What if we did this? What would it look like if we always did it this other way, but what would it look like if we made a few adjustments here that would be very relevant to, for example, virtual meetings? When I know in your case, Chris, you're not traveling and speaking from the stage right now as much as you have in past months. So that requires an adjustment.
It does, but it's funny. The coaching work has not slowed down, and many things have transitioned to an online format like this. So, and the phones are still working. There's still opportunity to get face to face, even if it's face to screen, and share your ideas. And as they say, it'll never be your best work till somebody else has read it or heard it. So, find that resource or resources that can help you to bring your ideas to life, because there's never been a greater need for ideas, for powerful leadership, and for innovation. The good news is that you don't have to have a PhD to be an innovator. It's something that's available to all of us. It's exactly one thought away. And that's only true 100% of the time. So innovation is within your grasp, and take the pen.
Take the pen. Well, I really appreciate you, Chris. So again, for folks, can you share that book cover for folks?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. The book is called, Leadership Language.
Leadership Language. And if folks want to follow up, I think it's westphallonline.com. Is that
That's
right?
right. Yeah. Yeah. And my last name, it's like the direction and the season, westphallonline.com. That's where you can find me. There's a place where you can contact me. If you want to talk further, you can set up a time to talk on my website. My calendar is actually online. I'm glad to connect with anyone. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, all the
all the channels.
Yes.
Channels. Yeah.
So,
for folks, what I would love to hear from you guys is, anyone that picks up the replay. Lauren checked in. Lauren Mudrock checked in a little bit earlier. Anyone who's out there, I'd love to know what you guys think of the one-to-one format. So we've been doing our lunch and learn with ERN panel discussions. We've done a bunch of those recently where we bring in 3 experts. This is actually the first Masterclass Conversation where we spotlighted one of our members of the Expert Referral Network. Do you like this format? Would you like to see more of them? I don't know. We're kind of exploring and seeing what will bring the most value to you, and obviously want to connect our members within the group, and from a wider audience perspective, make sure that folks know they're available in their zones of genius when you need to call upon an expert, who can best serve and who will answer the questions that you have that are pertinent right now. And I think a lot of people do have questions right now. So we want to bring those people to the front, like Chris. And appreciate your time, Chris, for joining us on this.
Well, thanks, Tobin. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And I hope this was valuable to everybody who was able to take it in. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you retelling the story. I went with the audiobook because I actually wanted to hear your voice as you told the story, and it made a big impression on me. So I appreciate you being willing to share it with our audience here.
Of course. My pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.